There's a fundamental battle between good and evil. And a lot of people don't want to recognize that. They don't want to acknowledge that battle. But we live in the world of polarities. We're always going to have the polarities, the light and the dark. Those polarities express in different ways. One of the ways they express is through what we call good and evil. And there's so many different ways to approach this. One of the first times I became familiar with it was in my study of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'll just encapsulate this briefly. The scrolls were discovered in 1945, 46, 47, 11 caves, Qumran in Israel. And they were discovered in 45 through and 46 primarily, but the information was not allowed to be released to the public until the early 90s. It's 45 years. And you say, what could be the problem? What could possibly be in a 2,500-year-old scroll that would warrant the Vatican intervening and not allowing this information and legal proceedings and the money and the energy and the time? What could possibly be in there? Well, the answer is, and you can't make this up, it was found in the first cave, cave number 1, in the first vase that they found in cave number 1 when they opened it was sealed. And the first scroll that they pulled out that was 19 columns that colloquially is called the War Scroll. And the War Scroll, in the language of the Essenes, the mystical sect that appeared 500 years before the time of Jesus of Nazareth, the War Scroll describes where we are right now. So it's ancient, but it's not obsolete. It's current. We are living what is called the battle between the sons of darkness and the sons of light. And I said this at a live event a couple of weeks ago, and there's a woman in the audience that took offense because she felt it was sexist. And so I want to clarify, 2,500 years ago, they weren't dealing with gender issues that we are today. So sons of darkness and sons of light is all-inclusive, male and female. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to clarify that. That battle between the sons of darkness and the sons of light, it plays out in insidious ways. Sometimes that battle is kinetic, all right? And we're seeing that on boots on the ground in a number of places around the world today. Often that battle is psychological, and we're seeing this play out in social media. The battle between the sons of darkness and the sons of light, the goal of that battle is to veil humankind from their power and from their potential, from their divinity. Having access to our divinity frees us from fear, and fear is a prized commodity in the battle between good and evil. When we are freed of fear, when we learn to love without fear and forgive without fear, and imagine freely and create freely and share information freely and heal our bodies, because we're wired to heal our bodies. These are all expressions of our divinity. When we are veiled, we can't lose it, but we can be veiled from it. We'll always have it, but we may not always know that we have that divinity. That is a form of evil, and that form of evil is playing out in our lives, in our world right now. And the goal is to disempower our humanness so that we are more vulnerable to the ideas and the agendas and ultimately the control of others. And we're seeing that. That's not a secret. We're seeing that play out. We aren't often given the opportunity to think of it within this larger context. The thing about a battle between good and evil, the old ideas of a battle are where forces are actually pitted against one another. This is a very different kind of battle on the spiritual level. This is Know Thyself podcast. The deeper we know ourselves, we discover that we don't want to win this battle because that would imply that we are meeting force with force. And we're more than that. We're human. And in our humanness, we don't win, we triumph. And the way that we triumph is by living our humanness, being the best version of ourselves, living, loving, healing, creating, imagining, innovating freely. That is how we triumph over this battle between good and evil. And so within that context, now you begin to see the transhuman movement. And I'm not saying everyone in the transhuman movement is aware of what we're talking about. They're pawns. Many of them are pawns. But when you go up into a higher level, this is exactly what's happening. The movement, the mass movement to shield humankind from their truest nature, to shield humankind from their divinity in a world that is being conditioned that's not good for us. So this is all part of the big picture. Now, you don't have to know any of that. The beauty is you don't have to know any of that. You live the best version of yourself, and you live it to the best of your ability, knowing that ultimately when you do that, you are triumphing in this battle between good and evil. And what is so interesting is in the scrolls, they identify 7 battles that happen between the sons of darkness and the sons of light. 3 of those are won by the sons of darkness, 3 are won by the sons of light. That's only 6. The 7th battle, according to the scrolls, is won by the sons of light. However, the caveat is it is only won after the sons of light accept their own divinity and through divine intervention from a higher power, whatever that means. So it implies that by us accepting the deep truth of who we are, that opens the door to a deeper connection to a greater power that allows us to transcend, to triumph, not to win, but to triumph in this ancient and ongoing battle. And that context, I think, changes everything. Because here's what it does, Andre. We're living in a world, and it's up for everybody right now. We're all going to get through this, and we're all going to be okay. And it's not going to last forever. There's a little window of time where these fundamental shifts are happening. And when this is over, I would love to come back and sit in this chair and have this conversation with you, and let's see how it all went down. But the key for all of us, we're going to get through it. The question is, what do we become in the presence of what life brings to our doorstep when we're going through the battle? What do we allow the events of the world to make us into? Do we allow the events unfolding in the world, whether it's politics or war or finances or a pandemic or whatever it is, or our personal lives? It's up for us in our personal lives, our relationship, because it's all connected. Do we allow those events to drive us to the most primal denominator, the lowest common denominator of our human instincts? Do those events drive us to hate, to want revenge, to fear? Or do those events awaken within us the deep truth of our love, our compassion, our forgiveness? And when we do have to fight, and sometimes we do, and I'm not saying it's a kinetic battle, but there's a part of all of us that has to create boundaries in our lives. And when someone crosses those boundaries, we have to express ourselves. But here's the thing. Do we fight from our love of what we know is possible and in support of those behind us, our family and our friends and our loved ones? Or do we fight from our hate and from our fear of what we think is the enemy in front of us? That is the most fundamental battle. And we're all up against this right now. And especially we're in the United States of America, we're seeing a divided nation right now. And I'm not saying everyone thinks or needs to think on this level. I'm not saying that. But ultimately, what I'm seeing happening, this is exactly what's happening. We have just gone through a very difficult couple of years for a number of reasons. We can't change what happened, but we can change how we respond to what happened. What did those years do to us? What did we allow those years to do us? Did we allow the events of the world to define who we are? Or do we choose to become more than those events? That is the difference between access to our divinity and not having access to our divinity. Those who are veiled from their divinity believe they have no choice. They're in fear, and they will succumb to the dark forces, the evil, the groupthink, the hate, whatever you want to call it. They'll succumb to that. And they're still our brothers and sisters. And so I think all we can do is love. We're going to love this world into a better place, and we're going to love this world. Our love becomes the bridge for those who are lost and haven't found that love in their lives for whatever reason, without any judgment. Somebody's got to do it first. And so as we find a way to love to the best of our abilities, then we become the bridge for someone else, either by example or energetically in the field. You don't even have to know what's happening to love. Does that make sense if I say it that way?
Yeah, that was great. I love that whole bit. That was amazing. Well, that was really powerful.
This is important because if you don't know, and it's no secret, I mean, if you watch, we're musicians. You watched the Grammys a couple of years ago. There were pure satanic rituals that were playing out under the guise of entertainment.
Yeah, there was some pretty weird stuff going
on the stage. If you watch, this is the year 2024. If you watch the Olympics in France, why would the pale horse of death need to ride down the river to open a ceremony for the best of the best, beautiful young athletes on our planet to compete? They're not even trying to hide it anymore, André.
It's almost like a mockery.
It's out in, and there were other things, the Last Supper, all those things that were happening. They're not even trying to hide it because this battle is up for all of us. And I'm not saying everyone has to think this way. Know thyself is one aspect, and we've also heard that knowledge is power, and lack of knowledge is lack of power. So if we don't know that we are in this fundamental battle, not to win, but to triumph, then it's easy to get locked into the thinking, and it's easy. And there's a difference between judgment and discernment. I want to be really clear about this. It's not to judge that evil at all. That's where you get stuck. When you judge,
you feed it.
You create a charge, and that charge is going to bring it into your life every time. You discern. You recognize, is this evil? Yep, that's evil. Well, I think I don't want that in my life or for my children. You allow its existence, but you walk away from it in your life. That's very different than hate. That's very different than fear. And these are the deepest spiritual principles that are up for all of us right now, where it's a spiritual and a psychological battle that's happening right now. But other than that, not much going on. I'm an optimist. Now, I'm laughing not at what we said. I'm smiling and laughing at the joy of the triumph, because we're human. This is the whole point. We are human. We are the only form of life that has ever been given the gifts of divinity and the ability to self-regulate our own biology at will, on demand, when we choose. No other form of life can do that. And there's been a concerted effort for decades to denigrate our humanness and to discourage young people from having confidence in life and in their own bodies. And that's reflected in a lot of choices that I see young people in our events, and they say, we don't have a future. We can't think about retirement. We can't think about our dreams. We don't think the world is going to be here for us. And that's sad to me, because there's so much good stuff. And when you begin to see what our humanness is really all about, the humans must prevail. And I wrote this book to advocate for our humanness.